got something really cool today. To start out with, a more common set, the 1934 John Players. I've separated out the Hall of Famers here. McCabe, O'Reilly, Hammond, Hobbs, Sutcliffe, Larwood, Bradman, and Grimmett. So those are the Hall of Famers in the set. A really strong group. There's also some other notable players such as Ponsford and Ames that could get into the Hall of Fame one day as well. I mentioned before there's only less than 100 men in the Cricket Hall of Fame as opposed to 300 something in baseball. So the bar has been very high to this point. They could always be a little bit more lenient, and these guys would definitely be deserving. So that's the first thing. But what I'm really excited to show is this autograph book that I bought recently. So when I bought the autograph book, first of all, I thought it would be bigger. It's quite small, but it's really neat. Even just the cover is pretty slick. So this has a really interesting story. This was someone in London back in the 1930s named Leslie Laundy, who collected autographs of people as they were coming through London. So, just famous people or locally famous people, a bunch of random folks in here that I had never heard of. So here's a skipper of a boat called Rosebud. And I've actually done research on some of these folks just to try to figure out, hey, who were these people? And some of them have really interesting stories. There's a couple folks who did really huge expeditions across the world in airplanes and ships that were kind of groundbreaking at the time. I believe this fellow was a comedian, Wee Georgie Wood. So that guy's a cricketer, never heard of him before. But there was a couple really important autographs in here. The first one, I did not have a Don Bradman signature. And Bradman has a couple different signatures. This is one from early in his career. So this was signed in the 1930s, maybe early 1940s, when the Australia team was playing in England. So I knew I was getting that signature when I bought this, which was cool. But really there were only two that were advertised, and I'll get to the second one in a minute. But this page just said cricketers. As I looked at this one, I could recognize the name from the signature, a guy named Chipperfield, who I had seen before in these sets. I don't think he was a very notable player, but he was part of this Australia team that played in England during this period. But then this autograph was kind of very interesting. I had no idea who it was, but I did know it was a cricketer because this was the cricketer page. And as I looked at it a little bit more, I thought, it looks a little bit like a loop C at the front, and at the end looked like it might be two T's. I wondered, hey, could this be Clarrie Grimmett, who is a Hall of Fame bowler from Australia, a slow bowler, googly bowler. So sure enough, I looked up his signature on Google, and I found that apparently he's a very rare signer, so there's not a lot of his signatures out there. They typically sell for a few $100s when they do sell, but sure enough, it's him. So I have a Grimmett signature, which is really cool. Had no idea when I bought this who else was really in this apart from Bradman and the second signer that I will show here in a second. So a lot of these pages are blank, but there's a couple comedians. So this is the other one I was super excited about. Paul Robeson is someone who I've admired for a really long time, has a really, really, really inspiring history. I actually bought a whole set of these Wills cards a few months ago, Radio Celebrities, only for his card, really. I never heard of anyone else in the set, but it's one of his earliest. I think he only has one earlier card. So I already had the card, and I saw this book that, hey, this person collected signatures from Bradman and Robeson. I felt like I had to have it if I could get it for a reasonable price, and I did. So super excited to have a Paul Robeson signature in this. And, there's other cool things in here as well. Film stars. Some of these, I really don't know who that is. If anyone could tell me who this is, would love to know. It's a really neat signature. I looked up this guy, Victor Ricketts. I think he flew around the world as an airman. This guy was a Indian cricketer. I looked him up, not too notable, but kind of neat. Gene or John Batten, I looked him up, found some information on him. Alf Waddington, cricketer. Again, not incredibly meaningful career. I don't even know what a mimic is. But I just thought this book in itself was just a cool piece of history. That there's all these folks that were obviously notable for their time, notable enough to get signatures of, that nowadays, have been pretty much lost to time. Not sure who that is. So Sandham, he was one of the better players on the Surrey team alongside my boy Hobbs. He might actually be in this set. I gotta look him up. But yeah, so he, was a relatively notable player. He has a bunch of cards from this era. Let's see if there's anyone else worth seeing. And there actually is one other signature that I wanted to show, which I just thought was kind of neat. Oh, Archibald the Arctic was pretty cool. Dance band leader. And yeah, I'm not sure who that is either. But there was one that I missed, which was the voice of Popeye the Sailor Man. He got an autograph of the original voice of Popeye the Sailor Man, which I looked up and it checked out. Anyway, pretty neat. And there he is, Billy Costello, Popeye. And I looked up his history. He voiced Popeye for a while, and then he went around, basically as a traveling tour, doing his Popeye voice to crowds. And my guess is this guy probably went to his show and got a signature afterwards. It's a really neat history, but man, hard to beat something this unique with Grimmett, Bradman, Chipperfield, and Paul Robeson. Hope you enjoyed.